What is going on, guys? Welcome to Barrookie. In today's video we're going over part 2 of understanding the human body with basic functional anatomy. So we're going to start with the torso today, and the reason why I'm making this series is because I really want to understand the human body better, but I also want you to understand the human body better. And the way we're going to do this is not by looking at every muscle individually, but we're going to look at the joint and see how the muscles are interconnected. Because if we're training muscles, if we're doing strength training, we're not just training one specific muscle. Usually we have a synergetic effect of multiple muscles working together in order to perform an action. So if we look at every joint specifically and see what muscles are over there and what type of muscles that we use, we're going to better understand our own bodies. So obviously we're not going over all the small mini muscles. We're going to really look at the prime movers and how they work together. So for the core and the torso, if you're talking about the torso, the bone structures that we have are the spine and the rib cage. If we look at the sagittal plane, that is the plane straight in front of us, the movement that we can do in that plane is flexion, so moving forward, and that is also called ventral flexion. And we also have dorsal flexion, or the extension of the back. If we look at the frontal plane, what we have there is lateral flexion, so we can bend side to side. And if we're talking about movement in the transversal plane, we are really talking about turning our upper body, which is also just called rotation. You have to know that if you look at pictures of muscles, the way the muscle fibers go and the direction the muscle fibers go also indicates how the muscle works. So a muscle can only do one thing. It can contract, right? Well, it can also relax, but a muscle can only work in one way. So if it contracts, that means that it puts the two ends of the muscle, the insertion points, closer together. That is what a muscle is built to do. And the reason why we have muscles all over the place is because if we do one action and we want to undo that action, we need muscles on the other side to undo that. Let's look at ventral flexion. The main movers here is the rectus abdominis, right? So these are the muscles that laying most superficial, right? So these are the ones that make your six-pack, and they attach on top of the ribs and below at the pelvis. So if they contract, they really bring the rib cage closer to the legs. Now, next to that, you also have the external obliques, and they run sideways. So they run downwards to the pubic area, and they are going to contract from both sides simultaneously when you do a crunching movement or when you do ventral flexion. And this means that we are doing a bilateral movement. More on that later. We also have the internal obliques, and if the external obliques run like this, the internal obliques run like this, and also they are going to help in ventral flexion. Okay, now the opposite of ventral flexion is moving your body back straight again or going into extension. And for dorsal flexion, we're basically going to use our spinal erectors. So these are the muscles that run from the crown of your head all the way across your spinal column, and they are going to extend the spine at that level. The next thing that we can do with our torso is move from side to side, and that is called lateral flexion. Here we're going to use our external obliques primarily, and then our internal obliques. Because these muscles are laying on each side, we have obliques on either side of our body, we're going to use them unilaterally. Unilaterally means we're only going to use the muscles on one side. So if we're flexing to one side, it's only going to be the obliques on that side that are going to work. If we're doing something bilaterally, like we did in ventral flexion, that means that we're going to use the both sides at the same time. Here we're also going to use the internal obliques on the side that we're crunching, really, because these are going to contract as well in order to make a sideways movement. but not only on the front, we're also going to use our spinal erectors unilaterally. So only the side that we're flexing at are we going to flex the muscles of the spinal erector. And deep within our belly and our hips, we have the psoas major. So the psoas major is running from all the way on your spine inwards all the way up to the front of the hips. And they also are going to help unilaterally with lateral flexion. Now, if we're talking about movement in the transversal plane, we are doing a rotation movement. And for that, we are typically going to use our obliques as well. Internal and external obliques at the same time. Now, we're not going to use them at the same side, but if we're twisting and turning, notice that the external obliques are running downwards and the internal obliques are running upwards. So if we're turning, we are going to use both sides simultaneously to make a twisting motion. And those are really the prime movers here if it comes to rotation. So if you've seen a trend here in everything that the torso does, so the torso's function is actually to stabilize, to protect the organs, and to really be a corset for our internal system. What we see is that with all the movements, we're really using our obliques, our internal and our external obliques. Our rectus abdominis, we're not using that much. Obviously, there is a factor of the rectus abdominis, but we're mostly using our obliques, and yet you see so many exercises that work on the six-pack and make sure that that six-pack is very strong. But I think that it's also important to really train those obliques because they help in so much stabilization exercises and they help in so many movements and even throughout your daily life, that I think the obliques are more important. Even though it's not a muscle that's really showing, I think you can benefit more from training your obliques very good in order to have a stable core and in order to lift more weights. That is the anatomy of the torso. I hope you got something out of this. I hope this video was clear to you. And if it was helpful, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And please check if you are still subscribed. Because maybe, just maybe you unsubscribed for no reason. Would be a shame though. So thank you so much for watching. I'll be seeing you all in the next video. Peace!